Hello again, and a really warm welcome back to the channel, or to the channel if you've not looked in before. Now, if you haven't looked in before, you'll probably wonder why we're looking at this little loco chassis, and you really need to have seen last week's video to understand what's going on here. So I'll leave a link in the description box. But what we're looking at really is this brush, and it's got a cross on it. Last week I replaced the carbon on this brush, and I didn't just solder on an original brush. I made my own carbon brush and copper plated it. So that's all in last week's video. But this short video this week is just the start of a follow-up, because I need to do some really good running tests on this to see whether it's going to be successful. So let me show you what I've set up to test. So I've got the little loco chassis. It's an R048 from about 78, something like that, Hornby. London Transport pannier tank, and I might put the body shell on in a bit. And I've set up a sort of loop of really nice Super 4 track. Now this is some of my nickel plated track. If you go right back to the early days of the channel, you'll see me refurbishing this Triang Super 4 track. Just here I've got an H&M clipper, great vintage controller. So let's see how the little chassis starts up from rest. Not bad for a 1977 or 78 item, is it? Okay, a little bit more power. So how I'm going to do this is I've got on the positive side of the motor, the side of the motor with the red wire, I've got a standard Hornby brush. So as it would have come out of the factory. And then my homemade brush is on the negative side of the motor. So we should get a good idea of how they compare, because the idea is for me, once I'm in the workshop every now and then, come up here, set this item running and just leave it for however long I'm working away. Not going to leave it totally unattended, because I just don't think that's a safe thing to do. But while I'm working downstairs, I can easily leave this just going around, and believe you me, downstairs you can really hear it, so if something happens I'll know. And I'm going to try and put a few hours onto the motor. Now I'd really like to put sort of at least double figure hours onto that motor, and then I think it will be a great observation to take the brushes out and have a look at how they've bedded in and how they're wearing. Well, you can see that that little pannier tank chassis is very happy. Now it sounds quite quiet here, doesn't it? But I think we'll slip the body on in a minute, because they can be noisy little locos. Yeah, well, I'm definitely very pleased with the way that's running, so I'm just going over to the clipper and I'm just going to back it off. Well, let's back up the loco now and just see how we go in this direction. There's no real difference in the running, but quite a good idea to run forward and reverse to give the brushes a chance to bed in both ways. These Wren wagons just run so beautifully. Probably should be running some Hornby or Triang wagons, but I just had these on the table. Right, I think I'm going to bring this to a halt and pause the camera for a minute and get the body shell on. Well, that looks quite nice, doesn't it? So let's get to the controller and ease in the power. Well, I think if you've owned these Triang Hornby or Hornby pannier tanks, you'll know that they can be quite noisy, but this one is running very nicely indeed, just whirring away, and I think it looks really good. So I'm going to put a bit more power on. Just as an aside, it is really quite amazing how much fun you can have just with an oval of track, running a couple of trains. I mean, I do enjoy using the main layout, but I do think sometimes I perhaps get as much, if not more fun, just with an oval of track and a few wagons and running a couple of little locos, trying out some different controllers, just almost playing with train sets. Well, I'm very happy with the way this is running now. Just want to thank a few people for some really useful input. Definitely the piece of wood I used in last week's video was very rudimentary. I did hold the brush in with a bit of blue tack. Well, I think if I'd have cut the little marks in the wood out with a sharper tool or made a better job of it, I wouldn't have needed that, and I will indeed make a better mandrel, but it was just on the spur of the moment with my penknife, so I do apologise, it was a bit rough looking. And also it's very interesting talking to different people about types of solder. Modern lead-free solder isn't always the best for this type of application, so indeed if you've got some nice multi-core, something like the original Ursin, it's a much better solder for model railway work. And once again, I do really enjoy all the comments and getting everyone's input when I do these little projects, so thanks for writing. But right now I'm going to go downstairs and finish making off a small bracket for a repair I'm doing, and I'll be able to check this is running just by listening to it, and hopefully I can put the first hour or two of testing on this motor. So I'm just going to get down a bit lower now so we can enjoy a look at this wonderful 1970s loco. And to be quite honest, for me, this sort of item really is part of the fun of model railways, especially if you like vintage items. Right, well, I'm going to leave you with this just for a couple more laps. So until next time, whenever that might be, I'm going to say goodbye.